Hello and welcome back to another video today here again on Forza Horizon 5 to test out another brand new car, and it is another MG, much like the, well, not really, the X-Power SVR we tested out yesterday, which that video went up same time yesterday if you want to go and check that one out first. But unlike that, this is a small Chinese hatchback, so it's more like the Wuling than it is the other MG. It's not really that powerful. It has a 1.5 litre engine producing 105 horsepower, weighs 1,155 kilos, is front-wheel drive, and puts it in D-Class at 444 PI here in Forza. Supposedly it's a fun, hot hatch, although it's probably more of a warm hatch to be honest, but we'll find out when we drive it. Usually slow hatchbacky things are quite fun to drive and race in Forza games, so it could potentially be quite good. Now, normally I would tell you a few interesting things about the car, but I really know nothing about it, so I did quickly check online a few facts about it. First of all, I found that Wikipedia seems to think the MG3 is a machine gun. On Forza here, it seems to think it's still British, because all of one manufacturer are obviously from one country, so it doesn't really class it as Chinese. I suppose technically it's still a British name, but anyway. I also found it's apparently Australia's best-selling city car, although it's being recalled because the fuel tank's falling out, which sounds slightly explodey. It's not really a good thing to be recalled for. I'm just noticing how horrible that back is. The way the window and the bodywork sort of... I don't like that. But anyway, I did also find they have 3 models in the range. The base model is called the Excite and is just over £11,000, and the top of the range exclusive nav model is nearly £13,000. So there you go, it's between £11,000 and £13,000, it's a small, slow hatchback. Shall we see what it's like to drive? So, away we go in our little MG. I found a livery, well, manufacturer colour with a stripe and red mirrors, which automatically increases that 105 horsepower to at least 120. But here we go in our warm hatch. It is by far the slowest car in the hot hatch category. Everything else is at least C-class in that category. It's got a very wobbly aerial. But yeah, Chinese MG, for those who don't know, it's... MG Rover was bought by a company called Syak at some point, possibly after the MG X-Power SVR bankrupted them, but definitely since then. So you might remember the Top Gear episode a while ago where they tested out the Roway, which is effectively the Rover. So it's the same company as that, effectively, if you want to look at it that way, and that really wasn't a very good car. As far as I can tell, this is a bit better. They've moved on a bit since then, but the whole recalling it for fuel tanks falling off is a little bit worrying. It was only certain model years, so hopefully that problem is now fixed. But anyway, it has a stripe, so what can possibly go wrong? But yeah, there's nothing in hot hatches I can take around the festival as a comparison, so I will have another look and see if there's anything else that vaguely makes sense. Otherwise we'll just see where it fits. As for the interior, it's quite nice actually. It has many red accents which make it a little bit more exciting. Look at that rev counter. It's very sporty for a very slow car. I don't like the buttons on the steering wheel. I think that's always a stupid idea. But yeah, I quite like the red bit. For a budget hatchback, it's not all that bad in here. There's no stupid screens anywhere. It is a manual, apparently. He's reaching for the gear stick, which was something I noticed in the other MG after I'd finished the video. There's no animation for gear change. It was a 5-speed manual, that one, because it was available with a 4-speed automatic in the normal SV, but anyway, that's just a quick thought on the last car. But anyway, we're on the MG3 today. Yeah, I quite like the interior. It drives quite nicely, mostly just because it's slow, not a lot can go wrong. But let's head on over to the motorway and see what top speed we can hit. Right, here we are, heading out onto the highway. So far I've only seen about 80 from the MG, so hopefully we can hit 3 figures. I am really hating the back of this car though. The way it sort of dips in the middle and there's that flat bit above where the MG badge is and there's a handle. But who thought that looked nice? That wobbly aerial is brilliant though. Anyway, we're up to dizzying speeds of, I was about to say 90, but it's not really going above 89. We are slightly uphill. There we go. On a flat bit now. Slightly downhill, maybe. There we go. There's 100. That's kind of... You would hope all cars could hit 3 figures these days. I wonder how much faster this is than the Wuling. That's probably the only car that's similar in any way. It's Chinese and cheap. Although probably even cheaper than this. Anyway, we're up to 110, which isn't too bad. Let's see. I think that's the most we're going to get on the flat. 111. But yeah, thereabouts is about what we're going to get on the flat. Let's see what we get when we get to the downhill section. Problem with cars like this is it takes an absolute eternity to get to the downhill bit. The MG X-Power thing got here quite quickly. Forgot how long it took in cars like this and, well, even longer in the Wuling. But on the downhill we appear to have hit 121. So that's the most we're going to get out of it, I think. Not too bad, it's just supposed to be a small hatchback. I know it's categorised as a hot hatch, but there isn't just a hatchback category in Forza, so yeah. For some reason the Wuling's in vans and utility. I guess it's sort of a MPV sort of thing. But anyway, let's head on over to the festival and see what this can do around the track. So, if you haven't seen one of these car review style videos before, basically I take the cars for 5 laps around the festival, and what I'm showing you here is the fastest. Now, I did find a close-ish hatchback to take round in the form of the Mark II Golf GTI. It was the closest I could find in terms of PI, only 15 less than this. It was hidden in the retro hot hatch category, which is why I hadn't seen it before. It's from 1992, so it's 23 years older than this, has 139 horsepower, which is 34 more than the MG, weighs 1,100 kilos, which is a tiny bit lighter, so on paper it's better, apart from being 15 PI lower, presumably because of the age. Now, I did notice on the lap round here, the Golf did understeer a lot, and I was changing gear constantly. And the 2 differences in the MG is, well, 3 differences. You could tell there was less power on the straights, really noticeable that it didn't get going so much. But in the corners, it handled so well. There was, basically, they had eradicated all understeer somehow from this car, which I guess comes with better tyres, and has had better brakes, better suspension, just because it's that much newer. Well, a lot newer. So yeah, I could tell that the PI was better in this, and yeah, I barely needed to change gear. It may as well have been an automatic. I was basically in 3rd the entire time in this, where in the Golf I was constantly changing gear. As we come around the final corner and across the line, the Golf did a 128.922. Let's see what the MG did. So the fastest lap time I could get out of the MG was a 128.222, which makes it the fastest stock D-class car we've had, which isn't too bad considering it's quite away from the top of the category. Admittedly, it's only just a matter of hundredths faster than the Mercury Cyclone, but yeah, that was the only car that was higher PI than this, so it's not as great an achievement as it might sound, and it was exactly 7/10 faster than the Golf, which you'd kind of hope it was faster than a 20-year-older car that was 15 PI lower, otherwise, well, it would be absolutely terrible. And it did handle way, 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 way better than the Golf. You could definitely tell the Golf's age compared to this, the way it sort of understeered, and you had to kind of hope the understeer would stop and you'd carry on out of the corner, whereas this had literally no understeer at all. So this was actually really, really nice to drive. Not fast, but quite nice to drive. So usually at this point I'd go and upgrade it to the top of the category above what it starts in, and take it around the festival again. But given I've not taken any C-Class vehicles round, which is what I would be upgrading it to, I think we should go and upgrade it to B, because I've got 4 B-class times already on the board. So, before I quickly build it to the top of B-class, I will quickly run you through the engine conversions and aero parts, just because there's occasionally some unique bits in here. We've got a 2-litre inline-4, a motorbike engine, and a turbo rally engine, which I won't be changing that or the drivetrain. Generally, I keep those stock in these new cars, just to, well, keep them with the drivetrain and engine they're intended to have. But there you go, you've got your rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive conversions, you've got your turbocharger and your supercharger in there, and in terms of aero, I'm not expecting anything particularly. No, you've got your usual Forza bits and hatchbacky Forza wing, which looks rather odd on this. Well, it looks really rather odd on anything. Anyway, it already handles relatively well, so I'll mostly be going for power, but let's get it to the top of B-class and then see what it can do. So after much fiddling about with engine parts to try and get the PI to balance exactly on B700, we now have a tune on it, putting it up to 233 horsepower, which I'm hoping is going to be enough, and bringing the weight down to 1100. I have gone with rally tyres again, because I feel like with the MG yesterday I kind of went too power and it didn't really handle very well anymore. So I have put full width rally tyres on, basically, and brought the track width out a bit. But other than that, not really done that much handling. I did suspension and brakes, I guess, but yeah. There was plenty of room to put power in as well as handling upgrades, so, well, let's see how it gets on. So, as with the stock vehicle, it gets 5 laps around here in its modified form to see what the best time I can do is. So, previously I've taken round 4 other B-class cars, the fastest being the Celica, which did basically a 1:13 dead. So that's the kind of time I was aiming for going into this. Now I did notice, now that it was modified, it did kind of understeer a bit. It was nowhere near as bad as the Golf, despite that still being in D-class, but yeah, the amount more, I've kind of doubled the power. So it was understeering a bit, despite the wider, grippier tyre compound. But yeah, not bad overall. I also found a good livery for it. A nice racing livery, which we struggled to find for their X-Power yesterday. So hopefully that will add horsepower and make it faster. But yeah, similar to the Celica, this is also front-wheel drive, as were most of the cars I've taken around in B-Class, I believe. But anyway, it still felt nice. There was a little bit more understeer, but it did feel fast going around here. So I wasn't sure. I thought I might have beaten the Celica. It felt like, it's a while since I drove that car, but it felt as good as that as we round the final corner and go across the line. So the fastest time I ended up getting out of the MG was a 1:14.107. I was really pushing to get into the 13s, but it's still more than a second slower than the Celica. That was a 1:13 dead, remember, so it's still more than a second slower than that. Although, having said that, it is more than a second faster than the 3 other B-Class cars I've taken round. So, yeah, it didn't do too badly. The Celica, I know, is quite fast, so I'm not too surprised by that. But yeah, not too bad from the MG, faster than everything else that I took round in B-Class. So overall, quite a fun little car. Drives really nicely stock, absolutely no understeer, despite being a front-wheel drive hatchback, which I did give it a little bit of understeer by upgrading it, but nevertheless, quite a good little car. So if you're not having a go with it because you think it's quite a boring hatchback, it is actually quite nice to drive, so probably worth going and having a go. And it's not too bad when upgraded to B-Class. If somebody who knows what they're doing gets their hands on it, it might be quite fast. Maybe not Celica levels of fast, but so maybe not top of the class, but it might be something reasonable to use in B-Class. But there you go, that is all for a first look at an MG3. So I did think going into this that, well, it's a boring hatchback, that somehow MG have gone from building MGB GTs to making MG3s. But yeah, it's not a too bad little thing. Feels quite sporty, quite nice to drive, just not all that fast compared to other modern hatchbacks. But luckily it was faster than the much older Golf. But there you go, that's the new MG. I will be back same time next week to test out the brand new Car Pass car and potentially Festival Playlist car, depending on what's being added. We don't quite know yet, but if there is anything new, I'll be sure to be testing it out, so make sure you hang around for that. But for now, for a first look at the MG, that is going to be all. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with the next video very soon.